So they don't give a shit whether you're a super talented kid outside of an MLS academy. You're kind of in trouble. And that's the unfortunate truth. And we need to fight that. Hey everyone, it's episode 395 of the 343 podcast. Today, Benny wanted to bring two audience questions for me to address. The first one was centered around the national teams, the youth national teams. How do players actually get on those youth national teams? And no, it's not as simple as, oh, you have to be good enough, right? That obviously is important, but it's, as you all know, meritocracy isn't really the thing that American soccer prides itself on. So we dive into that. And then audience question number two was the father of a 7-year-old wondering about our programs, the Parent Education Masterclass and the coaching education, because he is starting to coach as well and is wondering what is the best course of action so that he can better guide and mentor his son. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoy this one. Here we go.
It's absolutely savage, bro.
It's the
Different
best.
mentality. Anyways, I think let's answer two quick member questions. One of them kind of relates to the entire topic, and then the other one more of a coaching program one, but we'll quickly get into it. The first guy says, as the 2026 World Cup quickly approaches, I was wondering, how does a player get scouted for the USMNT youth team, U15 plus? You have multiple examples on the masterclass showing player position skills from Brian's previous teams playing for the USMNT, but you have never discussed the story behind their selection. What is the pathway for talent identification for the national team? Does being selected for ODP matter, or is it all through MLS Next academies?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have good news to share here because, again, this is the consequence of having a monopoly, one single company running the federation, corrupting the federation. So you kind of have to be at an MLS academy. If you take a look, Benny, at the youth national team call-ups over the course of time, say since, I don't know, 2000 to 2025, something like that, and you can go back in history and look at these things. They always show you like the roster, the selection, they show you the club that they're coming from. Over the course of time, sequentially, what they've done is they've started neglecting everybody and anybody who is outside of MLS and an MLS academy. And that is obviously to force all players to want to go to an MLS academy and force all parents to want to go to an MLS academy. So they don't give a shit whether you're a super talented kid outside of an MLS academy. You're kind of in trouble. And that's the unfortunate truth. And we need to fight that. And so step one, to answer this gentleman's question, you have to go there. It sucks. And then step two, obviously you have to have some talent. You have to be doing good and you have to kind of be already recognized as among the best, right? In the MLS Academy system. And how do you do that? Well, obviously, if you're an attacking talent, you better be scoring a lot of goals and assists because they're incredibly driven by those superficial stats. They won't look at the Busquets type player who is a genius in midfield, but doesn't ever show up on the scoring sheet, sort of thing. So somebody's going to call in, oh, well, what about this kid? Look, he doesn't score. But it's the fucking exception, okay? And then something that carries an extreme amount of weight that people may not be aware of is the recommendation of the coach and the coaching staff. That carries an enormous, enormous weight. So if this gentleman wants to relate it back to, say, the master class and, our players getting there, I think Brian had a huge influence and a huge hand in getting players called up. There have been countless situations where players who were never on the radar at all, just out of the blue, they get called up to the national team camps, and out of the blue, they make, World Cup rosters, sort of thing. So that's huge too. And I know some people might say, oh, that sucks, because coaches have their favorites and things of that nature. Well, I think the coach is going to try to do what's best by what he believes is the talent, right? He's not going to recommend somebody who is not talented for political reasons, even though that happens as well. Like, I'll tell you a story where when back in the residency days, for folks out there who don't know, U.S. Soccer used to have what was called a U.S. Soccer residency, where they would select a cohort of players to go to IMG Academy over there in Florida. And that's where they would convene and go to school and play together. And that's it. They wouldn't even be on a club team. They were just part of like the U.S. youth national team system, sort of thing. And when that was kind of in transition where they were wondering whether they were going to keep it or not keep it or something, there could be an ultra talented player, Benny, that is way better than what they have in residency, but they would take the residency kid to the World Cups and the residency kid to World Cup qualifying and elevate the residency kid to professional player status. So that was an incredibly political scenario. It doesn't exist now, but now the monopoly runs everything. So I don't know if I answered the question, Ben. MLS Academy and then coaching recommendation, and you better be a good player. The ODP thing, I don't know. Maybe ODP could help expose your kid a little bit from the perspective of, I'm sure there are still some eyeballs maybe looking at that. But what will end up happening is those eyeballs will then say, hey, we like you. Um, you would be maybe considered for the youth national team, but you're not on an MLS academy. So until you're on an MLS academy, we aren't going to call you up. It's dirty like that, Ben. Super dirty. The
Yeah.
other avenue,
No.
the other avenue is ODP. Somebody sees you, somebody believes in you. It's not MLS, it's not the U.S. Youth National Team system or whatever. It's somebody outside of that kind of, and they're like, okay, kid, I'm going to take you to Europe, or I'm going to elevate you or take you to a USL team and elevate you that way. And then it's possible for you to get into the U.S. Youth National Team system, because now all of a sudden you're playing, for a U19 club team in Germany or a U19 club team in Portugal or something like that. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, they sample from there too, because then there's the dual national situation potentially.
Yeah, and this is why it's so easy for an MLS academy to go and jack kids from local clubs, because that's their selling point. It's like, okay, if you're at this local club, you're never going to get a chance of the U.S. national team, or you're never going to have a pathway to MLS. And so I can recall countless examples of teams that are small clubs, local clubs, and phenomenal players, phenomenal team. And all of a sudden, the LA Galaxy comes in, FC Dallas comes in, and just swipe their entire roster. So it seems like that's a huge selling point or on how to get these kids into the MLS academies. It's like, hey, you want a chance at the national team? Okay, well, playing at this small local club is you're never going to get there. And in my experience, Gary, and with ODP, I'm more familiar with it on the girls' side, because I've had players that have said, "Hey, coach, I'm missing training this week. I'm going to ODP." I I kind of feel like it's, and maybe I'm wrong, but like a money making thing, because some of the players, Gary, that have been selected to go to ODP, I'm thinking in my head like, dude, there's no chance that you're anywhere near the level of national team level or Olympic develop. Like, there's no way, bro. So I think it's more of just like, okay, hey, this is a program that we have. Come in, you'll get a chance. I think rarely players get selected from ODP to go and play on the national team.
Oh no, never. That never happens, Ben. It's the path that I kind of said. It's like, hey, go and try to be part of these sort of quote unquote elite things. But I agree with you. It's more of a money grab than anything else. And then maybe if you're good enough, somebody will come around and say, hey, get your ass to an MLS Academy. And if you get there, then maybe you have a chance.
Yeah.
Ben, ODP used to be part of the path. You know this. 20 years ago, that was the shit. Oh man, my player got selected to ODP. Here we go. But now
Yeah.
it's, ever since MLS took the monopoly, US soccer gave the monopoly power to MLS. Ever since that happened, ODP doesn't exist. It's just nonsense now.
Yeah. No, I remember back in the day, Gary, when you would hear that a player got selected to ODP, it's like, oh shit, like this guy might be a future pro, and then this is badass. Now you hear it, and it's like, what? This player is getting selected to ODP?
It's almost like,
I'm
look, I want to be, I'm just gonna say, usually when people say, "Oh, this player got selected to ODP," I'm like, that's still around. That's my gut reaction.
Yeah, 100%. Gary, when you said that a big part of getting selected to the youth national team is the coach, having those connections and reaching out, was it more a case of the national team coaches would reach out to Brian or reach out to the coaches, or Brian would reach out to them and say, hey, I think you guys are overlooking this kid.
I think
Here's my recommendation.
both things would happen, but the kind of examples that I just gave you are more of him taking the initiative and saying, "Hey, so and so, you need this player," and they didn't even know who the player was, or the player was like totally under the radar, like not even considered or something. But Brian would take the initiative, and then they would say, "Okay, I guess we'll take a look." And then when they would take a look and call him into a camp or something, it's like, "Oh yeah, amazing, brilliant, thank you so much." Like, and now this kid is part of the whole setup.
Yeah. How did Brian initially have those connections? Like by the time did he get to Chivas, did he already know some of the staff within the youth national team? Like I know
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time the coach was Tab Ramos, right? And that
No,
was
no, what
one of the guys
it's
that
way before Tab Ramos, and way before that stuff, Ben. He was even during the Rage days is kind of like the beginning of it all, because during the
Oh,
Rage
really?
days, yeah, during the Rage days, where again, I hate to rehash it for the audience here, where he took a total wreck team, and then over the course of years got promoted, because there was promotion relegation here in Southern California with the best league in the country and all that stuff, and got to winning a national championship. That was kind of the tail end of that, was kind of in 2007, 2008, 2009, when the US Soccer Development Academy first got launched, and Chivas USA first got an academy team, U16, U18 academy teams of their own. And then the Rage team would, scrimmage the Chivas USA teams, right? Once in a while. And they were like wars, right? So there was already in US Soccer already knew of Brian's work to a certain degree, not obviously not to what it should have been or whatever. But that's kind of when it all really, really started. And then he got into the Chivas USA setup for obvious reasons, because his work was phenomenal. And then from that point forward, Benny, it's like everybody knows you and you know everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. The last thing on this subject, Gary, the U20 Olympics, U20 World Cup. How important is it for a player to play in those types of environments if they want to eventually make it to the senior team? Because I feel like there's been examples of players that didn't play in those U20s, U17s, and they still got elevated to the national team. And you see it vice versa, where players do participate in those and they don't end up making it to the top. So how
Yeah.
important are those
I mean,
tournaments and
I mean, it
camps?
I mean, it's really important because it gives you a leg up. You're in the spotlight. So if you kill it in the spotlight, then somebody's going to give you a chance on the senior team eventually. Uh, uh, there's countless examples of that. But if you're not killing it on those teams, it doesn't matter all that much, because the senior men's national team is about the men's game. And the players who are ultimately going to be regulars there or actually stick are the players who do very well in club football, or do well. Yeah. So you could be killing it at the U17 national team or U20 national team. That's fine. Maybe somebody will give you a little taste at the senior level, but it's not until you establish yourself at the club level and, do something worthy of remark there in the eyes of the technical staff of the senior team, that you're going to get opportunities. And over the course of the years, and this people, MLS people think this is a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. It's just incentives. Over the course of the years, you see more and more how the senior men's national team has been corrupted and co-opted by Major League Soccer as well. And Major League Soccer now basically uses the platform that is the senior men's national team to market the league, to market their franchises, to market their players, that they want to market. And so there's this very questionable relationship that exists there. So all that said, Ben, you can see why maybe you only see a few guys who play for the youth national teams make it to the senior men's national team, and it's getting more difficult, because look, ultimately, who's going to get called up to the World Cup by Pochettino, if Pochettino's still around? I think a lot of the Euro guys are going to be the guys, right? The starters there. So unless you get yourself to Europe at some point, it's going to be very difficult for you to be any significant player at the senior level when it comes World Cup time.
Yeah. And you talk a lot, Gary, about kind of this vicious cycle that exists where in order to get more exposure from clubs overseas, you kind of have to be in that national team environment, right? Especially for like a lot of players that have been purchased by overseas clubs is because they've been promoted to the senior men's national team or the U20 national team, and that is how they get the exposure, right? Versus other players who haven't had those opportunities and aren't able to be platformed. So it's
Yep.
it's hard to it's hard to break into that cycle, dude.
Yep.
Especially if you're not one of the guys that the national team staff likes.
Yep. Or if you stay here in MLS, not one of the guys that MLS likes.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
but yeah, that's true, Ben. The guys who get opportunities overseas are the guys who get elevated by the senior men's national team more than anything.
Yeah.
And frankly, if they like you or they want to make you see that I don't know if you know much about book publishing. I mean, I'm not going to say I know a lot about book publishing, but obviously before the internet and still to this day, you get published and get on the New York Times bestseller list. All that shit was a mafia as well, that run by gatekeepers, and they pick and choose who they want to elevate and make a star. Same with Hollywood. They pick and choose, okay, we're going to make you a star, and they deploy their resources to make a particular person for whatever reason. They have their reasons, a star. It's not necessarily because this actor or actress was more talented than that actor or actress. That's not why. And it's not because this book author was more talented or better, more interesting than this book author. They pick and choose and they create stars. So that is what these guys are doing here with the Monopoly. They pick and choose, okay, we're going to make this one a star, but not that one. And so that's
Yeah.
how they platform them then, consequently or subsequently, on the national team. And then subsequently, they get the exposure to Europe. And then subsequently, they decide, okay, we will allow you to be transferred to Europe. Because a lot of players here get interest from Europe or South America or wherever, but they get blocked, Benny. The league says, nah, right, we ain't going to sell you. Nah, and because we don't want to, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
Benny.
And at that point, the player doesn't have much power, right? Because the club or the franchise owns them. Yeah.
Yeah, you have very little recourse unless you are like a senior men's national team player. Because if you're a senior
Yeah.
men's national team player, then you have leverage. You could get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I'll just rent out my contract and you get zero. And then the franchise or MLS will be like, okay, well, then we're not going to play you anymore. But that's weaker of a threat now because the world already knows your level. You're on the senior men's national team. You with me?
Right.
So there, among other leverage points that you can exercise. But if you're not at that level being platformed, you don't have much leverage, Ben. So if the franchise then threatens you, okay, well, then we're not going to play you the next 2 years of your contract and sink your career or something. What's the player going to do? He's going to bow his head. He's going to kiss the ring, lick the boot, and say, "Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stay at Colorado Rapids then, or I'll transfer to Nashville, like you tell me to."
Yeah. I remember Gary, and we obviously won't mention the player or the franchise, but there was a player that had interest from Europe and they still had, I don't know, maybe a year left on their contract. And you guys let the franchise know, like, hey, listen, we want to make the move. And I remember for that entire year, basically, they didn't play the player and he kind of just had to stick it out and finish his contract. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm trying to remember. There's been so many cases. There's been so many cases.
I just
It's not. It's
remember
not. It's
at
not.
the
It's not.
time,
It's not a top tier player. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're being benched because you're not good enough. Is actually the reason.
right. I just remember like the player was playing and then,
Oh, yeah,
okay, we
yeah,
want
yeah.
to,
That's right. That's right. That's right.
and then all of a sudden for like 6, 8 months, this
That's
guy's
right.
just on the bench.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I do remember. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's right.
So you know what I'm
Hey,
talking about now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's what has to happen, dude. If a
Yeah.
player, if a family wants to make a specific move, you've got no choice. You either grow some big boy pants, right? Or you fold.
Yeah. 100%. All right, dude. I think we answered this guy's question in detail. So he'll appreciate it. The next one is kind of similar to questions that we've answered before, but I'll show this guy a little love. He says, I'm reaching out because I could use your guidance on the various courses you offer. I'm interested in them all, but due to budget constraints and stage of life, I need to be strategic about where to start. A bit about me: I'm a parent of a 7-year-old who absolutely loves sports, especially soccer, and shows real promise. I know, bias. Inspired by your podcast, I want to help him develop a strong foundation and start his journey. I've recently volunteered as a head coach for a rec league 7v7, and I'm now looking to grow in both roles as a coach and a parent supporting my son's development. With so many great courses available, I'm not sure which one is the best starting point for me. For example, should I begin with the coaching premium membership, the 7v7, or the player masterclass? As a new coach, would the player mastery content still be valuable for me, or will the coaching premium or 7v7 suffice? And then lastly, what path would you recommend for someone in my position? I'd really appreciate any direction you can provide.
Yeah. So a few thoughts. Number one, the most important one is it's a little kid. So we're talking about what, how old? 7-year old or something like that? I don't even know.
Seven.
7
Seven.
year old. Okay.
Seven.
Little kid, you got a lot of time. A 7-year old doesn't need remarkable coaching at this stage at all. In the team environment, you don't need remarkable coaching. What you need is to develop a love for the game, affinity for the game, have some great time and all that stuff. And you start needing to have, better coaching, I would say, just to throw out a number, maybe once you're 10, 11, 12. 12 might be a little bit old at this point, but maybe, not 7. You don't need it. And since you're the dad of the kid, the parent master class is where you want to go, man. The parent master class is aimed at parent education. And what we mean by parent education is developing your eye for football with gold standard principles. And once you understand and really develop your eye with gold standard principles, then everything else is downstream from that, Benny, because then you're prepared and primed for doing good work as a coach. And then you're prepared and primed for looking out into the ecosystem and being able to tell whether that coach there is better than that other coach here, right? Or then you'll be able to tell whether this team is better than that team, or this environment is better than that environment, or this activity is better than that activity, et cetera. Or this guy online who's selling shit knows what the fuck he's talking about, or doesn't know what he's fucking talking about. So the parent education is where this particular gentleman should be starting out at. And then, okay, when you're ready next year or 2 years from now your kid is 8 or 9 or 10, then jump into the coaching stuff. I know he said he's a volunteer coach right now for a rec league. That's fine. Maybe give it a year and then get the coaching education. But
Yeah.
for now, maybe just try to figure things out on your own. And in the parent master class, there are, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there are some sort of visuals of what is good training as
Yeah,
well
there
versus
is.
what is not good training, what should be done in the team training environment versus what shouldn't be done in the team training environment. So you can already get those sorts of things and start applying them.
Yeah, no, there's building out of the back, there's rondos. So I think you're right, Gary. And you always give the example of your physics students. Like, you wouldn't start in the most advanced course, right? Obviously, I don't know physics terms, so I'll just generalize it with like simple math, right? Are you going to start with algebra 1 or pre-calculus? You know, and I think if you start at the bottom and then you start to open your eyes to more of the concepts, then like you said, it's going to be easier to transition into those moments. But within the masterclass, there's, especially for the younger ages, there's so much that they can start to develop. And that way, by the time they get to the coaching program, they're a little bit more, the parent is more educated, but also if he's implementing all these activities with the son, his son will be more technically proficient. And I hope, Gary, that when parents go through the masterclass, they're sharing the information with their kid, like, hey, look at these wall activities, look at these types of skills that you can be doing. Hey, this is how you build out of the back. This is what proper possession looks like. And so yeah, I think it's important for the parents to help their kids to open their eyes, especially at the younger ages, dude.
Yeah, I also hope that we get a lot of folks with very young kids in the parent master class, when their kids are like this guy, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then learning the stuff that's there, then maybe inspires them or gives them confidence, maybe say, you know what, maybe I should coach. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then start a team or get a team and the kid's part of the team, and we can always talk about parent coaches if we like, and that whole thing. But I think it could be helpful for them instead of them just being thrown into the fire as a coach. Okay, you're coaching your team now, and you don't have that priming that the parent education offers you.
Yeah, Gary, I would rather have a parent coach that's gone through the masterclass and transition onto the coaching education platform
Yeah,
versus a coach that's goes on YouTube and types in, what is Bayern Munich doing today? Oh, I'm gonna run this with my team.
yeah,
You know, I think if a parent, I don't know, I would want my kid to be on that team versus
for
the
sure.
other versus a phony.
For sure, for sure. You know what we should do also? We should maybe start like an affiliate program where parents who are in the master class, it's like, hey, get your other parents in on the master class
Mm,
as well, because then everybody's going to benefit. The whole team will benefit. And then, yeah, you can be an affiliate. We'll kick you back a percentage. Done.
that'd be smart. Yeah. Genius, actually. But Gary, what's going to end up happening is the all the parents are going to get on board for the program, and then they're going to open their eyes to how shocking the coaching is. And they bounce for
No, no, that is the risk. And I've said it many, many times.
yeah. Coaches beware it, but it's okay. It's about calling out the ones that are the problem in this country, bro. I mean, Gary, I'm on the fields every day, and I just see some of the sessions or some of the coaching points that coaches are making, and it's not surprising where this country is where we are. I'll just say that
Indeed, my
without
friend,
calling out
indeed.
any names.